Welcome to The Way Left. I'm your host, Brian Vitello, and today's podcast episode is USAID, SNAP, and healthcare, starving and sick. So, as a reminder, not only is this podcast, The Way Left, on Spotify. Remember, go out there, leave comments, follow. It is also on YouTube. There will be shorts on YouTube too that are basically episodes, segments of episodes that are taken out. That is at The Way Left BV on YouTube. And a final reminder that we have a website called The Way Left. And what you can find out there, you can find all the podcasts under the podcast tab. And under recommendations, I have what are you reading, what are you watching, and what are you listening to? And specifically for this episode, because we're kind of talking about health, sickness, food security, health security, worldwide security for all Earthens, including Americans. Under recommendations, you will find some good things under what are you watching, that they're videos or movies. One's called The Biggest Little Farm, which is about sustainable earth, and they put together this farm and eating right and treating the earth right. The China Study, which is about food in general, by T. Colin Campbell, a PhD, who studied the effects of preservatives and meat on your diet. And then Forks Over Knives, which is talking about, just health and food. A lot of this is coming from a vegetarian or vegan perspective. I'm not here to tell you that I don't eat meat or that you should not eat meat, but think about what you're putting in your body and then think about what that means from a holistic, when I say holistic, for the world, for Earth, for people on Earth, and what we should be doing, not only for food, but for healthcare, for medicine, for all the things that make us live a better life in terms of how our body feels, mind feels. Okay, so we're going to jump right into USAID. USAID, for those that have kind of heard recent news, in February of 2025, it was canceled by the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, if you will. That was led by Elon Musk and his army of non-empathetic minions. They wanted to save money. So they wanted to save money by eliminating the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. Background to this, it was created in 1961 by John F. Kennedy, a former president, that said, hey, not only are we going to try to help the world, but we're also going to fight or politically put in place obstacles for others to have soft power. Let's define soft versus hard power. Hard power is easy. That is invading Iraq. That is fighting wars. That is World War I, World War II. That is hard power. That is a hot kinetic war. That's generally what you think of as hard power. Soft power is political. It is, how can we help others to not only help them, but to help ourselves, and in our case, for democratic governance, for the health of the world. This gives us leverage. Now, sometimes we use that leverage in the incorrect way, but that helps us put out there that we're not only in it for ourselves. Obviously, we want something out of it, right? That could be political leverage, but also to help other nations go down the road towards democracy, to some form of people's liberation. And in part, USAID was a part of that method put together by JFK to help us, help the world, help ourselves. It's called soft power. Now, can that be hegemony, which means that we're trying to rule? Yes, there is some of that. But it also eliminates countries like Russia, like China, who are proliferating in Africa right now because we've rescinded our ability or our capability or willingness to help the continent of Africa and other places around the world with things like education, global health, talking about pandemics, epidemics, Ebola, malaria, things of that nature to help those countries not have to fight those things so that they don't go around the world, and it makes the world a better place for them. So you don't have as much war-stricken areas of the world, so that we can share in the wealth of the world, whether that be in minerals, whether that be in business. And so the U.S. was the leader on that forever until this administration. The Orange ASCOM put it in place that we're going to be an isolationist/protectionist country. I would say that's dangerous. So USAID was committed to education, books, information, global health, environmental protection, and democratic governance. The estimate for USAID, an estimated 91.8 million deaths, including 30.4 million among children younger than 5 years old, were likely prevented by USAID funding from 2001 to 2021. That's amazing. And that's good for everybody. We are Earthens. Trump administration terminated 83% of this aid. Okay. Let's talk about the costs. The cost was an average of about $23 billion from 2001 to 2024, estimated up to $45 billion. At $45 billion, we're talking about 1.4% of our total budget per year. And at $23 billion, we're talking about 0.8%, 0.8%, not even 1% of our total cost to help the world. Now, the argument is that we need to spend that money on America. We need to spend that money on the United States of America. Well, this is falling under the Secretary of State and also under the Department of War, and let's see how that helps America. Okay. So let's see some of the things that monies were spent on. They're spent on democracy, human rights and governance, economic growth and trade. This is a legal quid pro quo. We're going to help you. Let's call it Botswana. We're going to help you. We're going to help you with things like malaria, fighting Ebola. We're going to help you with ways to get clean water. We're going to help you with education. Do we want something in exchange? Maybe. Maybe there are things that we can do in business and trade. Maybe you have something that we would like a trade. Maybe we can eliminate some of those trade barriers because we've created this soft power matrix. Education, we spend money on. Global health, humanitarian assistance, environmental and global climate change, conflict prevention and stabilization, which makes the world a better place. Because if we are not involved with conflict prevention and stabilization, guess what happens? Terrorism. It leaks over into other borders, might leak into countries that we consider our friends, our partners, even though we've eliminated a lot of those. When we say things like we're going to take over Greenland or that we're going to make Canada the 51st state, that really doesn't sound like protectionism or isolationism. That sounds like hegemony. That sounds like we're being imperialistic. So when people say that USAID is not about America, we need to get rid of it because we can't pay our own bills. We can talk about our own bills. But then we do things like say, Greenland is ours. We want it. Give it to us. Denmark. We have a military base there. We have military bases a lot of places. That doesn't represent isolationism or protectionism. I don't believe in isolationism or protectionism. I believed in a world of governance so that it's not a free ride for everybody. And we can talk about trade and trade imbalances, and we can also talk about defense spending and things like that. But to eliminate our soft power is a dangerous precedent, and that's exactly what we're doing. So they said in fiscal 2024 it was about $32 billion, which is less than the 45, which would put us closer to 1%, right? 1% of our total spend to help the world. The initial budget request in 2024 was later supplemented significant emergency funding for a country called Ukraine, who was invaded by Russia. They were not, this was not some sort of particular war. So as we remove soft power, we make the world a more dangerous place. Because remember, we're the leader. Do you know who created NATO and the United Nations? Basically, the premise of that? The United States. This wasn't some nefarious attempt by the dark left-leaning people to put together NATO and to put together United Nations. It was America's principle to say, hey, we are the power. We're probably going to flex. We're not going to flex necessarily with hard power, even though we have done that, some right and some wrong, a lot of wrong over the last 50 to 60 years in terms of conflict and war and nefarious activities behind the scenes, like replacing CIA operatives, replacing leaders in Central America and in Iran, or hardcore wars like Iraq and Afghanistan, Vietnam, things of that nature. Soft power helps us help the world to make it a safer place, not only for Ukrainians against Russia, not only for people in Africa against disease, but for the United States of America, because if the world is a safer place, then it's a safer place for U.S. businesses to go around, for U.S. citizens to travel, for countries to look at us in a more of a, they're trying to do the right thing than trying to do the wrong thing. Now, should we be the only one that supports the world? No. Other countries support the world. I can tell you right now, and this is all over the news, Russia and China are heavily moving back into Africa because the U.S. is moving out. So what does that mean? We lose soft power. I believe in USAID. I believe it fits into our budget. I believe that it should fit into our budget. It is a principle put together by people that I believe are trying to do the right thing, first for America, and secondarily to make Earth a safer place for all people, including Americans. The contrary argument is that we shouldn't be spending money outside of this country. Okay? So, as I say that, I would say that we do have to take care of our own backyard, and we do have to figure some of those things out. But I would say that global health is America's health. That less war makes the world a safer place, and it makes the U.S. a safer place. That education for all makes the world a better place and makes the U.S. a better place. And when we eliminate that from our directives, from a political and from a country scale, what we're doing is we're hurting us and them, even though we're all a part of Earth. Okay. So what else happened with USAID? That's wonderful and kind of sad. So not only are we leaving people without things, but we also destroyed food. Because it was going to expire, what we decided to do was we decided that we're going to stop USAID. This is Elon Musk. We're going to stop the humanitarian aid because it's costing us too much. It's just costing us too much, and we need to save that money. We don't want to help Ukraine as much. We don't want to help Africa. We don't want to help with health around the world. And what we're also going to do is, once we did that, we ended up eliminating food. We had to get rid of food because it was going to expire. The DOGE cuts to USAID have led to significant disruptions in food aid operations. The agency's dismantling has resulted in the destruction of nearly 500 metric tons of food aid, including high-energy biscuits intended for foreign aid. So let's think about this. We couldn't have distributed it. We're just going to cut it. This is Elon Musk. We're just going to break things. Well, he broke it, And then we destroyed 500 metric tons of food aid. Destroyed it because we had to move that fast. We couldn't just give that out and give that away and help people. Thanks, Elon. I know he talks about empathy is overrated. Well, if you have none, then what are you? So how does this lead into my other topics that I discussed here? We talked about SNAP. I have SNAP and healthcare involved in this title. USAID, SNAP, healthcare, starving and sick. So let's talk about SNAP. And I talked about this on a previous podcast. SNAP are benefits, basically food stamps. It's about $100 billion a year. And when I mentioned the metrics earlier, actually USAID is about 0.6%. SNAP was the one that could be up at 1.4%, up to maybe 8%, 0.8%. SNAP is about $100 billion a year. 69% of those food stamps go to people under 18, people handicapped, disabled, and what we would consider elderly over 60, so 69%. And then the other 31% people would argue they need to get jobs and we need to get rid of that money. 42 million people need SNAP. Now, is there grift? Of course there is. But we fought over SNAP. We fought over food aid for our country while we're basically burning up 500 metric tons of food. We could have just distributed that to Americans, but we didn't do that because we have no empathy. We are going to isolate and protect this country to the point that we're even going to starve our own people because we can't pay for SNAP. Now, that was, we don't want to pay for SNAP. Now, that was part of the government shutdown, which they actually now have passed. So now SNAP is back into effect, thank God. But we look at it and we say that USAID is a bad idea because we're helping others. We can't even help ourselves. Well, maybe if we bring that money in, we can help ourselves. We can talk about the construction of our budget. And I'll talk about that in a separate podcast about 2026 and beyond. But to eliminate soft power from your mantra, just militaristically or politically, is a disregard for the health of the United States of America. That's what I believe. When you disregard others, when you disregard and think that we're the only ones, that's dangerous. Healthcare was the other term that I used. And let's talk about healthcare. And what I would ask anybody out there to please tell me what right of center Republicans, conservatives, MAGA, which I don't consider conservatives, and far right groypers like Nick Fuentes, what is their solution? What have they proposed in the last 35 years for healthcare? What have they proposed? They bitch about Obamacare or the ACA Act that gives subsidies to people that can't afford healthcare. But what is their proposal? What's the proposal? I guess it's health savings accounts, HSAs. Well, if people can't afford health care, how do they afford to save for health care? And then people say, well, it's immigration. We need to get them out of the system because they're going to emergency rooms. Well, some of that may be true. I don't know how much of a portion of that. But I can tell you that people that the uninsured that are American citizens go to the emergency room too, which costs us all. And this goes back to the overall idea of food security, health security, water security, education, which is what USAID was based upon. How do people get sick beyond just like getting cancer, but just obesity, which is rampant in this country? Not able to work, needing SNAP benefits. How do they get there? Well, part of it is that they're not offered food security. They can't afford food security. They're also not educated to understand food security, water security. And that's back to those videos I was talking about. Read about food and think about what you're putting in your mouth every day. And we all are guilty. We all have guilty pleasures. And I'm not sitting here trying to stand on top of a platform and tell you I'm the healthiest guy in the world, but we also need to consider what we can do to inform the public through organizations, through the government, through SNAP benefits. They're not just giveaways, they should be educational opportunities. So when I bring up healthcare, people say, well, and I'm arguing that Republicans have not put up a very good plan, if any plan at all. Mike Johnson talks about it all the time. They don't have a plan. Their plan is to privatize, more insurance companies. Maybe they'll cut the insurance companies out. Maybe they won't. They still don't have a plan. It's so fucking expensive, nobody can afford it. Even people that somewhat can afford to even pay their health care premiums. So let's look at some of these reports. Let's look at health costs by country. Now, the argument would be here is if we take the USAID money back, we can dump it into our own pockets, but we haven't done that. What we did is we took the USAID money back. We increased the Defense Department's or the Department of War department's spend by $200 billion, which basically covers USAID and SNAP benefits and more total for that. And we also increased ICE budget. So we've already spent that money, so we don't have it to give back. So in 2022, countries with the highest healthcare costs in 2022. Now I'm going to compare this against the health of people based on the IMF. Now people would say, "Oh, I don't believe in those data statistics." Yeah, well, dig further. The U.S. is the highest. In 2022, it was $12,500 per person. That was the average cost. Okay? There are several reasons, things that may factor into higher health costs in the U.S., from high drug costs to extensive administration fees. So we should look at that. The fact remains that the United States spends at least 40% more on healthcare per person than any other country in the world. Okay? We spend 40% more. And what are the outcomes? So the second is Norway at 8,600, Switzerland 8,000. So we're, again, 40% higher than the next country. And then we go into World Health Index. Healthiest and unhealthiest countries in the world in 2025. Now, bang for your buck, we should be way ahead, or at least in the top 10. Where are we on this list? I can't remember. It's so far down. If I go to this list, I keep looking, I'm down. Canada is at 40. Saudi Arabia is at 47. Russia's at 52. The United States on this ranking system. Again, I guess you could compare relative sense of the data. So I'm not saying that we're at 61 and that's universal, but we're low. We're behind Oman. We're behind Bosnia. We're behind Azerbaijan, Uruguay, Russia, Moldova. We're behind Liechtenstein, Qatar, Chile, Lithuania, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, Greece. And remember, we spend more than all these countries. So we're failing at that. Let's look at life expectancy. Females and males, this is 2025. This is after COVID. So pretty good numbers. Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea. What do they all have in common? Well, they're all Asian countries and their diets. Italy, they got the blue zones, which are healthiest places in the world. Number 7. Singapore, number 8. Spain, number 9. Let's see, where's the United States in here? Canada, number 19. All these shithole countries that the Orange Ass Clown talks about. Portugal, 22. Austria, 29. Denmark, 30. Finland, 31. United Kingdom, 37. Costa Rica, 40. Fucking Kuwait, 43. Oman, 44. United States, 48. Male life expectancy, 77. Females, 82. So why am I bringing up all these different topics? Yeah, we're talking about USAID and helping the world get better. Well, it seems like the world's doing pretty good. Well, it's all relative, right? If I go down to the bottom of this list, we start looking at, you know, sadly, you start looking at this list and you have a lot of countries that suffer, a lot of African countries that are struggling. And that's part of the reason that we want USAID to help. The argument is we should bring that money back in and help ourselves. We can't even cover the cost of that $12,500 per month. What we're not doing is we're not supporting ourselves, nor are we supporting the world. We have an imbalance. We're struggling with life expectancy as a rating for the world, for all Earthens. We're struggling with the healthcare index, and we're spending more than anybody else. But nobody has a solution. The Democrats have a solution, but the Republicans say that solution's too expensive. It probably is. It's because the system is broken. So our solution to that is to criticize people on SNAP and say they need to get a job, is to get rid of USAID because we don't want to help the world anymore. We're going to isolate and protect. But let's talk about isolation and protectionism. Can we? I brought up Greenland. Greenland, of course, Donald Trump said he wants it because he wants it for the minerals and we should own it and we should take it over. He called Canada and said they should be the 51st state. So our partners, our friends in the world, we've turned into our enemies. That's not isolation or protectionism. Donald Trump is posting right now about the Honduras election because he doesn't want to go one way or the other. Does that sound like isolationism or protectionism? We're bombing Venezuela, bombing fishing boats, killing people, some of which have drugs on them, but we know fentanyl doesn't come through there. But that's isolation or protectionism? Or is that just starving and sick? We give chips to we give not potato chips, maybe we give that too. We give semiconductor, we give the AI chips to UAE, Saudi Arabia. We do deals with Qatar for boats or for airplanes, but we're protectionists and isolationists. Now, I don't want to be protectionist and isolationist. We sure in the hell shouldn't. We should have soft power around the world, including what's to be. Wow, I screwed that one up. But what's included in that approach should be aid, should be education, should be helping solve different diseases around the world to make the whole world a better place, a better educated world. But it seems we don't want that. And we sure in the hell don't want it for our own people because we're going medical bankruptcies. We might be the only first world country where you can go bankrupt on health. And you don't even have the right to die. But we're going to fight against things like Planned Parenthood that help women beyond that. It's minimal what they spend on abortions, just helping people get healthier. We can't even do it in our own country. We're going to eliminate Medicare and Medicaid or reduce it. We're going to fight against SNAP benefits. We're going to eliminate the premium subsidies on healthcare for 20 to 50 million Americans who can't afford it anyway. But our solution is to get rid of USAID and we're just going to solve it. And we're going to bring that money back in, which we're not, and we're not going to spend it. So USAID, from an argument that we shouldn't spend outside the country, and we just put that as a one black and white principle, okay. But it's a symptom of what we're doing in our own country. We don't live as long. We're not as healthy. We're not as happy, but we spend more than everybody else. So not only are we fucking ourselves, but now we're just going to fuck off everybody else, except for those that want to do quid pro quo the wrong way. Give me some oil, I'll give you some chips. Now, I'm not necessarily against that. You do need trade, but don't we also need the other things? Don't we also need food security, health security, water security, education security? Not only in the United States, but the whole world? I would say the answer to that question is yes. Maybe a lot of people wouldn't. And it seems to be that's the way we're going. We're just going to isolate, except on those things that we feel are good for the deal we're going to make. So that Witkoff, Trump's right-hand man who was a frickin' condo builder in Brooklyn, can make deals with the Saudis and Jared Kushner, make deals with Israel. I mean, how much do we spend on Israel? Are we protectionists and isolationists? How much do we spend protecting those that we deem okay, but for those poor and sick, the shithole countries that Donald Trump talks about, we're not going to help them. And in fact, we're going to replicate that in the United States of America and not help those shithole people. Trump would say that's only Democrats. He says shithole people for anybody that's poor. Well, let me say the divide is growing. And let me give you a quote. This is from Henry Ford. If there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own. Reflects his deep insight into human nature and teamwork. Teamwork. Isolationism and protectionism is not teamwork. The ability to get the other person's point of view. Hey, I need water security and food security and health security here. If you can help us with that, maybe there are things that we can exchange, such as soft power. That may just be a political thing. Or maybe it's, hey, we have resources. We produce something that we can do a trade deal on. We have intelligent people you can outsource work to. We have minerals that we can do deals on. You help us with this, we help you with that. That's true political clout, soft power. That's legal. That helps. To person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own. That's important on all sides, from left to right, from USAID to SNAP to healthcare for all. And the quicker we get to that, the quicker we can be successful like Henry Ford was. As a business leader, as a man who started a company that basically produced most of the cars in the world for a very short period of time, created a company, an American company, that thrived, had its issues, but it's thriving. So we have to think about that. When we want to isolate, when we want to protect, what are we giving up? And that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're thinking about. We're not going through the process of saying, how does this affect us? We're just looking at dollars and cents. That's what Elon Musk did when he breaks things. Destroying 50 metric tons of food because, oh, we cancel it and we don't know what to do with it. Could have just sent it to, the Rust Belt. Nope, can't do that. So I leave you with that quote. Reminder, go to the website, read some of those books, check out some of those videos, follow me, bitch about it. Tell me what you think about isolationism and protectionism. Do you believe that we should not only support ourselves but others? That we should be integrated, but we should also integrate that intelligence by learning from others and how we can help our own country? Why are we 50th on the list or 61st or 48th on the list? What can we learn from those countries when it comes to healthcare? Why are we spending 1.5 to 2 times as much as most countries that are way ahead on the metrics than us? What does our food supply look like? What is our our security of water and clean water. I know RFK Jr. is supposedly working on this. I think in some ways, from an environmental and make America healthy again, which I don't like any of those terms, there are things to talk about with preservatives. There are things to talk about environmentally. Of course, we're destroying the EPA at the same time. Worldwide, we're not attending the G20 or the G7 on international issues. So we have protected to the point that we're destroying ourselves on the inside while also helping the rest of the world, not helping the rest of the world, and giving up our soft power, which in the end makes us weaker. And that's a fact. Not everything is hard power. Soft power is way more important. And it's what we built post World War II. NATO, the United Nations, USAID by a great man in JFK. And we're destroying that day by day by day. And in the end, if the argument was, if I saw the results, if I said, oh, we eliminated that money and boy, look how good things got here. No, that's not what happened. We passed on those cuts to fund the military, to fund ICE, and to fund tax breaks for the top 1%. There is no argument over that. That's the truth. So, eliminating one has not produced the other. Get on with it. Help the world, help ourselves, and the world will be a better place, which makes the U.S. a better place. And I thank you for watching this episode of The Way Left.